Obviously, this topic is a topic I think that's been on everyone's mind for a number of months now, or possibly even a few years. I think the first thing we have to kind of acknowledge is that this area in particular has moved very quickly, especially on the trans issue, paying attention to. And so when schools went back, a lot of people have been slowly waking up to the reality that a lot of the material getting taught in schools is not what parents expect or parents want. And this is not something specific to Muslims per se. Even if you speak to non-Muslims, this is something which is shared amongst a lot of people. I think also we have to acknowledge from the beginning that there has been, to a degree, some silence in our community on this particular topic. And there's obviously many reasons for that. There is a general anxiety or fear, I would say, in society of people saying the wrong thing, getting themselves into trouble with the law. As you know, lots of, or a number of personalities, famous personalities, have raised these issues in the media and have been cancelled, and it's affected them. So people generally, get a bit nervous. It might affect their employment. It might get them into trouble with authorities and so forth. And then obviously when you look around and see a lot of people are not saying much, everyone else just kind of follows suit. And so you've got a silent majority which feels in a certain way, but they're having these kind of small conversations. I was talking to somebody in the legal field, saying that his boss, non-Muslim, was having this conversation with him, but she doesn't feel confident to say it in front of other people. So people are having these conversations with people they trust. And anyone who they don't know, they're kind of nervous and they're not saying anything. And so I've been talking to, not obviously people just in the Muslim community, I've been talking to people in the non-Muslim community as well. I was speaking to one individual who was in the legal profession, he's retired now. And I was asking him, look, what are people saying in your community? And he was saying the same thing, that the silent majority are against this, against the issue of sexualization of school children. But he said that they're afraid of being labelled as homophobic or transphobic or whatever else, a bigot and so forth, or just generally offending people. And he also said that a lot of people are just not aware. They're just not aware of the issues or the depth of them. So I think that's our kind of starting point. And so when I thought, okay, I need to look into this a bit more, we need to look at, from a community perspective, what we need to do next. The first place I started was the law. So I reached out to a lawyer in the community and just said, look, what does the law actually say? What can I say as a khatib of a mosque? If I'm giving a khutbah, if I'm giving a talk, what can I say? What can't I say? What would get me into trouble with the law? And what is absolutely legit? Obviously I have to state what I believe. So that was the starting point. And I think this is, when it comes to another issue like alcohol, most Muslims are quite comfortable in speaking to a non-Muslim, knowing fair well that by giving your argument on alcohol, it's not going to lead to society all of a sudden giving up drinking. But you feel confident enough to say, look, I don't drink, this is my reasons for it. And, a non-Muslim will hear it and say, well, I can see where you're coming from. I get it. I get your argument. It makes sense. And I think we've got to get to the point that on this topic, we should have the same kind of level of education in the community, that if we're in a conversation and we are asked about this, we can confidently say, this is what our religion says, and this is the reasons why. Or very quickly, just give a few reasons which may not convince the other person, but think, okay, fair enough, I can see where you're coming from. So the thing is, when it comes to us as parents, I'm a parent as well, these things concern me, as it concerns many people. We can't shy away from the uncomfortable conversations which we inevitably have to have with our children. It's not something that maybe we desire, but we have to have them. Now, if we don't have those conversations, what will happen? They will just discuss it with their peers, and they will obviously go online at some point and come across this stuff anyway. Even if you're homeschooling your children, You can't get away from the media. You know, if you footballers are wearing rainbow bands, you know, you've got all sorts of people. So they will come across this and they will ask, what is that? What is going on here? The other thing is to put things in perspective. I know that a lot of people are very fearful of this topic, but in reality, if you look at the stats, a very, very small percentage of the wider population actually identifies as being from the LGBT community. So we shouldn't. We should keep things in perspective. Yes, it's an issue. You know, it's coming up. You know, when we're discussing things. However, at the same time, it's not like, you know, our kids are going to get exposed to this and like 25% of the community is all of a sudden going to become homosexual or want to change their gender, right? If it does affect us, it will affect us like the rest of the community. It will be a very small portion of the community that it would actually affect to the degree that they'd probably want to make that change. So that's the first thing. We have to kind of, it's an issue, but let's not exaggerate the fear and anxiety, which I think a lot of people are feeling. I was talking to a couple and they were basically saying that, you know, they're thinking of not having children. And one of the reasons was this whole agenda. They said, you know, I don't want my children bringing a child up in this world. They're going to get exposed to all this stuff. And I said, look, that's taking it a bit far, right? Yes, it's an issue, but I don't think it's an issue that we cannot deal with. So when it comes to education and it comes to teachers teaching something to our children which we don't agree with, the first thing to remember is the power of the teacher in comparison to the power of the parents is minuscule. How many things do you remember, you know, really meaningful things do you remember your teacher saying to you from school versus your parents? You're always saying, oh, dad said this or mum said that, right? But how often do you say Mrs. Brown said whatever, right? So the solution to our worries lies in good parenting, right? We can no longer be relaxed in this issue and think, well, you know, our parents did an okay job, we'll just repeat what our parents did. No, they lived in a different time and what worked at that time will not work now. So we have to, in a sense, update our parenting skills. And so this is one thing that I've been discussing with our parenting coach at Unity Family Services. That's the other organization I work with. And I think her take is actually is spot on. She basically is very strong on this thing of connection. Her key word is connection, that you must be connected to your child. And good connection, good communication with your child is the key. This is what's going to help us with this issue and every other issue that comes up in the future, because this is not the only issue that's going to ever come up that we find challenging. It's always important that we always, you know, want to, as an impulse, want to protect our children. So if they say something like, oh, no, that's not allowed, you know, or don't think that, or we kind of panic a little bit. It's very important not to panic, because if they see you panicking, they'll say, oh, I can't really talk to my mum and dad about this because they're already, look at them, you know, they can't handle it. If they feel that they can't handle what they're saying, if they feel that parents can't handle what they're saying, they will just, you know, keep it to themselves. They will not open up. So you have to be able to take it, that when they bring up this topic, you're like, oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, did you come across that? You know, don't make it as big a deal as it might feel like inside, so that they feel relaxed. They say, okay, mum and dad are okay with this. Let me talk to them about it. And then it's very important to ask them how much they know, because we don't know what's going on. You have to know what's in their mind before you know what you need to do next. So you have to ask them, how much do you know and what do you think about it? Very important, because they might say, yeah, I think that's silly. I don't think that's, you know, I think two dads, that doesn't make any sense to me. How would they bring up a child? Or a boy becoming a girl is, you know, doesn't make sense. So you might not actually have an issue. You might in your mind think there's an issue, but your child might not have an issue. So the problem might not be actually there, the way you're thinking about it. So the first thing is always ask them what they think. And if what they think is not correct, or you think they need a little bit more, then you say, oh, that's interesting, Muhammad, you know, that you said that. This is how I look at it. I look at it like this, and, you know, the Quran says this, and the Sunnah says this, and this is what, there was this study done and they did this and there was this other thing. So you basically back up what you're saying with facts. Make sure that what you're saying is factual, not emotional. Make it based on facts and Quran Hadith, right? So, because what you're doing is you're training them as well. And then what you want to do is reiterate with them, okay, and make sure that they've understood what you said. So you say, well, did you get all that? So just say it back to me, so that you know that they've actually understood what you just said. And this obviously requires a bit of work from parents. This requires for you guys to read up a little bit and find out what are the counter arguments to the things that are put out there. There's an organization that came up very recently to train up imams. It's called Muslim Minds. I saw some document that they had put together. They put various scenarios together. This is how they kind of train young people up. So there are people doing these things. Inshallah, I'm also planning to release a few videos which will give a number of arguments when we're discussing this issue with people who, obviously have a different perspective. And inshallah, you can just pick and choose some of those arguments and then, obviously modify it to for your own children in a way which is appropriate for their age. Also, I don't think we should be preemptive. Like, don't bring up with a 5-year-old. Only bring it up when they bring it up or they're exposed to it. We'd rather not them be exposed to stuff, but we don't want to make it any worse. So you bring it up when they bring it up, or when they're exposed to it at school, right? Because they might not, because every school is different. Some schools don't bring it up as much or as early, others do. So it's very varied. And then the truth of the matter is that we've always been taught un-Islamic things in schools. If you think back to our time, as a Muslim, we always knew, okay, well, I don't eat haram food. Your parents had instilled this into you, isn't it? Well, there's certain things that other people can do, you can't do. So, for example, we can't eat pork, right? We can't eat haram food. We don't drink alcohol. Boyfriend, girlfriends, we don't do that. For girls dressing in a skirt, no, you can't wear that. You have to wear trousers. So we were always told and always taught that there's certain things that we cannot do because we are Muslims. And this is the way we approach it with children. We say, look, non-Muslims do this, some non-Muslims do that, some non-Muslims do that. And also, some of them believe, for example, that two men can get married. We don't. We believe marriage is between a man and a woman. So you just extend it to a long list of other things which they already understand that they're different from, or they have a different perspective from other people. So that way it's not like made this massive issue. I know obviously it is a bigger issue because it's being pushed in schools in a way with other things which I'm talking about, which were not at our time. But that's the way we kind of going to try and approach it. And then ultimately we have to explain to our children that, look, we have a different outlook on life with people that either from a different faith or no faith, right? Because for us, God matters. God is at the center of everything. Ultimately, God has created us. God knows what's beneficial for us and what's harmful. And God has said, for example, homosexuality is unlawful, right? Same-sex marriages are not allowed in our faith. And then say to them, look, this was also the case in this society. Pre-1967, this was a crime, this was unlawful, this was illegal, and now it's celebrated. So you have to show that, look, in this society, they go with what human beings think is good. So human beings might think something's wrong now, and tomorrow change it, and then tomorrow change it back or change it to something else. So there's no red lines, whereas we have clear red lines. For example, suicide is not allowed in our religion. Tomorrow, suicide might become legal in this society, and obviously there is a bill going through Parliament, the assisted dying bill. So that would mean terminally ill people can terminate their lives, which is suicide. I mean, from our perspective, you can't do that. You can't kill yourself. But if you didn't believe in the afterlife and you believe this life is everything, it actually makes sense, doesn't it? That, well, if you're going to die anyway, why be in pain for 3 months? But we have to just say, look, we have to look at things differently. So suicide's a no-no for us. Things which are not allowed today can become allowed tomorrow in this society. Incest could become allowed tomorrow. Things which were a big no-no yesterday are a big yes today. They're celebrated. So why not incest? Obviously drugs and so forth. And so many other things can become lawful which are unlawful. So we need to teach our children, look, our vision is different. God is always at the center. But other people don't believe in God. Or other people may believe in God but see things differently and think that humans have more say. So when it comes to back to the parents, another issue that we have is that some parents are scared to bring up these topics with their children because they think if I bring up this topic with my children, then they'll start thinking those things and I need to protect them by not bringing those things up, right? But actually, that is not a good strategy because I said they're going to get exposed to it anyway. Even if you're homeschooling them, they'll get exposed to it. So we need to open up the conversation so that we can then positively change their thinking, if you want to use it. Change their thinking to the correct way that obviously our faith dictates for us. But for that to happen, obviously you need to know what the child already thinks, because only then can you challenge those ideas and deal with them. So there's too much fear, I think, in our amongst us on this topic. We should kind of just relax a bit. It is an issue. Inshallah, we can deal with it, but there's no need to become so fearful that it basically feels that we just can't deal with that at all. And the last thing I would say, and I feel quite strongly about this, is that this label of being a phobic is used as a bully tactic. And we have to teach our children that you do not let anybody call you homophobic or transphobic, right? And if anyone says that to you, straight away you should say, I'm very offended by that statement. It's very rude and it's misplaced. In fact, all of us should do that, even as adults. Anyone that says something like that, the first thing you should say is, I find that very offensive, right? You say, do you believe in the Prophet Muhammad? No, you don't. Okay, so you're Islamophobic, right? Just because I disagree does not make me phobic. If I don't believe in alcohol, I don't drink alcohol, I think it's impermissible, it does not make me alcoholic. I don't eat pork, that doesn't make me porkophobic or anything elsophobic, right? So you have to show them that this is a ridiculous, because the thing is, they use this as a tactic to shut people down. So and it puts people on the defensive. You need to go on the offensive. As soon as they make a statement like that, you say that's very disrespectful, it's very offensive, right? I feel extremely offended by what you just said. So you put the pressure back on them and then explain why it's offensive, right? So obviously we say, look, we're against harassment, we're against mistreatment, we're against violence, we're against all those things. So why is it just because I disagree, I'm all of a sudden phobic? If that's true, then you're Islamophobic, right? And obviously there's lots to say on this topic. We're just getting started, but there's other people that need to input, so I will leave it there.